Hey there, Mr. Sam here of Young Scholars Academy. I hope you're doing well. I'm coming at you today to talk with you about self-esteem and self-efficacy. Now, in a recent video, I talked about the importance of self-esteem, and we're going to define self-esteem as the way that one perceives oneself, so general self-image. Now, we know, as I discussed recently, that working with like-minded students is key in students having a higher self-image. Twice exceptional students are often marooned, struggling socially, and sometimes even bullied because of their asynchronies, right? And if we think about this sort of cascading wedge, we have the students' high abilities and strengths in certain areas, and then we have their lagging or learning differences, and that gap, that chasm between the two can cause them to struggle socially. They may have the intellectual prowess of a graduate student and perhaps the emotional maturity of a middle schooler. And they're going to struggle to socialize with maybe older students and younger students because of their asynchrony. So that can cause a lot of harm and difficulty, and that is why it's so important for these students to come together, be together, and realize that they are not weird, they're not alone, and there are people that are just like them or similar, and that they can come together and feel better about themselves. Additionally, we know it is so important that these students have this healthy, developing self-esteem because it really affects their prefrontal lobe through to the amygdala. We know that that's going to be the emotional epicenter, the amygdala, and that is going to allow for better executive function, day-to-day processing, and the ability to complete tasks, right? So when we feel better, when we have better emotional and regulatory abilities, then we can better regulate and execute tasks. So that's going to improve things like working memory and so forth. But something else that I have not spoken with you about, which I'm really excited to mention, is the difference between self-efficacy and self-esteem. So we just mentioned self-esteem. Now we're going to look at self-efficacy. If you think of self-esteem as the way one looks at oneself, self-efficacy is one's belief in ability to change outcomes, right? So that if I do certain things, that they will actually yield the outcome that I want, right? And we know that if we look at the work of Albert Bandura, the famous psychologist, you might know him from the Bobo doll experiment, from observational learning, we know that these students really need one another, and that all students are going to develop self-efficacy through being able to be supported by one another, right? When they can say something and then their like-minded students and peers and teachers can recognize what they're saying, acknowledge what they're saying, and perhaps support what they're saying. Oh, great job, you're right, that's an important observation. We should do that. Or, I wonder why we didn't think of that before. That is going to be huge in building self-efficacy and self-esteem. So these are two key factors that are baked into Young Scholars Academy classes. And by the way, in our next video, we'll be talking about a missing X factor that we also put into all our classes, and you won't want to miss that one. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.